my channel. Today's video is going to be the all about my palette tag. I saw this tag video thanks to Morgan Turner and I absolutely loved it. I loved the idea. I believe that Ali Gaines and Samantha Marsh were the ones who created the tag, so I'm going to link all three of those channels down below if you guys want to go and subscribe to them and watch their palette tag videos. I absolutely loved the questions that were asked. I said in a video not too long ago that we needed to have more tags in the YouTube world. I missed them, and this was the perfect one about my favorite subject ever, and I cannot wait to share with you all about my palettes. Before I get started answering all of the questions, don't forget to please give the video a thumbs up if you enjoy it before you leave. If you're new to my channel, please go ahead and hit the subscribe button, ring the notification bell if you want to get notified every time that I upload. And with that said, let's go ahead and get started. I had so much fun picking out the palettes that I wanted to talk about in this video, going through the questions, selecting the palettes that fit each category from my personal collection, and I cannot wait to get started. So let's go ahead and jump right in. So the first question is, show your newest palette. And my newest palette that I have in my house right now is the one I'm wearing, which is this one right over here. This is the Norvina and ABH Pro Pigment Volume 4 palette, and I am loving it. I just finished filming my 5 looks 1 palette with this one. I don't know which video you'll see first, this video or that 5 looks 1 palette video, but this palette is so nice. I like it a lot better than her first 3 Pro Pigment palettes that she came out with, and it wasn't a matter of like color selection for me. Granted, I do like these colors better because they're a little bit more tamed, a little bit more basic, just like me. But also I have her volume 1, and that one I've only used once, but I did have some trouble with some patchiness going on, and I had absolutely none of that with this one. So this is my newest palette and I am really loving it. I was saying at the beginning that is the newest palette that I have at my house because I did order another palette already after this one. I ordered the Pat McGrath Mothership No. 7 palette, so I'll have some videos with that one coming soon hopefully, but it hasn't arrived yet. So the Norvina palette is my newest one. The second question is to show your oldest palette, and my oldest palette that I still have in my collection is this one right here. This palette has to be at least 7 years old, and I could never get rid of it. This is the original Naked palette. RIP, it's been discontinued. It's so sad. I would never get rid of this palette. I tried it like around a year ago and it still worked perfectly. I feel like it's not safe to do that anymore, but I did it anyways. And I don't know, there's something so nostalgic about this palette. I feel like this is the palette that started it all for me. This was my first ever high-end palette purchase. It came with a brush that for the longest time was the only brush that I used to apply it. I remember watching like videos and tutorials on this palette and like learning how to use eyeshadows, and it just has a really big place in my heart. I could never get rid of this one. The shadows are still so pigmented and buttery. Back when this palette was so popular and I wanted it so bad, I didn't really have money to spend on makeup like that. I'm pretty sure I was still in college. I had moved out of my dad's house. My husband had just gotten here from Cuba. We were struggling because we were only living on my salary. I had a full-time job. I made $12 an hour back then, and we had rent and a car to pay with that. I was budgeting like crazy. I would have never bought this palette, but my friend from work, her name is Rana, I freaking love her, she gave me a $50 Sephora gift card for Christmas one day, and I went into Sephora and I was so excited because I knew exactly what I wanted, and it was this Naked palette right here. So again, love and cherish this palette like crazy. I am never gonna get rid of it no matter how old it gets. The next question is to show your most expensive palette, and it is this Natasha Denona one right here. Now this one is not mine. My palette that I bought for $129, that is the most I've ever spent on a single palette, is the Metropolis palette. I have a video review in that one, and then I have a 5 looks 1 palette with it. But my friend Deb, who I used to work at Sephora with, and I switched them, not permanently, we're still planning at some point to give them back to each other. So I have her Lila palette, which is the same price, and she has my Metropolis palette, palette at her house. So that is the palette that I've spent the most money on. It was the first big palette from Natasha Denona that I justified buying because it has, I believe, double the amount of colors that this one has, and each pan is exactly half the size of these. So I'm like, okay, I'm getting a ton of eyeshadow in there, a ton of colors, really great formulas. So I went for it and bought it, and that was the first time I ever spent over $100 on a palette. So this one is my Metropolis palette, even though I don't have it with me. But that is my most expensive palette I've ever bought. The next one is to show your most affordable palette. The only palette tag video I watched is Morgan's, and she chose this one. I'm sure that a lot of people's cheapest palette would be this because it is just so freaking affordable. And that is this e.l.f. quad right here. These are the bite-sized eyeshadow palettes from e.l.f. I bought this one at Walmart and they retail for $3. There's a whole collection of these. I only have this one because I wanted to try them, and this one is called Cream and Sugar. I tried it in a drugstore haul applied video I did, and I wasn't super impressed by it, but for $3 it is an amazing deal. You just have to blend a little extra hard. I've heard that some of these quads are better than others, so maybe I just wasn't in luck. But only $3 for this little quad right here I think is totally worth it, and this is the cheapest palette I own. The next one is Show Your Everyday palette, and I really struggled with this one because I use every single palette. I try to rotate them. I usually have a new palette in my collection that I'm reviewing or doing looks with, like the Nervina palette right now. So I go back and forth through my palettes a lot, and I pick out a different one every once in a while and go for it. But I had to make a decision, and the palette I picked for my everyday palette is this one right here. This is the Charlotte Tilbury Pillow Talk palette, and the reason I picked this one is because when I'm not quarantined and I'm actually working, I work for a Charlotte Tilbury counter, and so I'm supposed to wear Charlotte Tilbury looks, right? And so I reach for this one all the time. It is my favorite Charlotte Tilbury palette that I own, and when I'm working regularly, this one is just such an easy palette to use. You can get your eyeshadow on in like 2 minutes. It has beautiful colors. The formulas are absolutely incredible. It has very nice everyday wearable eyeshadows in it, and it also is the brand that I work for, so it just makes sense, you know? So that is why I picked this one as my everyday palette. I absolutely love it. I have a 5 looks 1 palette video with this one if you guys are interested, and also a video where I reviewed it and gave you my first impressions on it. Obviously, I love it. This was my first big palette from Charlotte that I bought. These retail for $75, and if you are looking for an everyday palette and you're into neutral pinky shades, I definitely recommend this one. It also has 4 looks laid out for you. Every 3 eyeshadows is a different look, so she has it very nicely laid out for you. It's very thoughtless and just mindless to do an eyeshadow look with this one. It is absolutely the easiest thing ever. So this is a really nice everyday palette. The next question says to show your most colorful palette, and I think my most colorful palette is this one right here from Alyssa Edwards. This is the Alyssa Edwards collab with Anastasia. I'm not sure if these are still being sold. I was also thinking of, which this one's a lot bigger, so I mean technically it has more colors, the Jaclyn Hill Volume 2 palette with Morphe. But I believe that even though this one has a lot less shades, it does have a lot more variety. It has less neutrals because a lot of the colors in this Jaclyn Hill one are neutral, and it also has that one blue shade in there which the Jaclyn doesn't have. So I think this would be my most colorful, but I was really debating between these two. I really love this colorful palette too, and I think it is the closest thing to like a rainbow palette that I have. I don't really have one that has all of the colors in the rainbow in it, so that is why I chose this one. It was the first one that came to mind too. I was like, a colorful palette. Alyssa Edwards is so freaking colorful and so beautiful and richly pigmented that I just had to talk about it, I guess. Next, I'm going to show you my smallest palette, and I really went through my collection and looked at the net weight of like the eyeshadows, because I had different palettes that had the same amount of eyeshadows, and sometimes an eyeshadow pan could look bigger but it's like not as deep, so it might have less product in it, and it might just be a little tricky to really know what your smallest palette is. But I looked at the weight on my palettes because I was in between these and the little mini Natasha Denona ones, and I think my smallest palettes are the quads from Charlotte Tilbury. These right here have 0.18 ounces and they have 4 shades each. I have a few of these in my collection and I really enjoy that formula. As you can see, they are very travel friendly. But yeah, these are the smallest palette in my collection. I compared it to the Natasha Denona mini palette. I compared it to the e.l.f. palette that I showed you earlier, and it's the one that has the least amount of product in it. The e.l.f. packaging is a little smaller, but it has more eyeshadow in there, so I wasn't sure how to measure it. Was it the packaging that mattered most or the amount of eyeshadow you get in there? So that's what I went with. Then I'm supposed to show you my biggest palette, and I feel like there's a lot of palettes out there that are bigger than this, but I have never gone for one of those jumbo huge palettes. So the biggest palette in my collection would be the Jaclyn Hill palette, the original or the volume 2. These palettes are from Morphe and they have 35 different shades in them. I have this one, I have the original one. Those are the biggest palette in my collection and I absolutely love both of them and I reach for them quite often. Next, I'm going to show you my palette that holds the best memory. I also struggled with this one a little bit. As you saw towards the beginning of the video, I have a lot of memories about the original Naked palette. But the one I went for was this one right here. This is my Born to Run palette, also from Urban Decay. And this palette holds really great memories because when I started my YouTube channel, I was thinking real hard how I could differentiate myself to get my videos out there. I was barely getting views and I was growing very slowly, and I thought, because I worked at Sephora at the time, a lot of people want to know different ways to use their palettes, and I also realized that a lot of the big influencers at the moment were not doing different looks with their palettes. They were throwing out a palette review, giving you their first impression, doing some swatches, doing one look on both eyes, trying maybe 5 out of 30 eyeshadows a palette could have, and being done with it. I'm sorry I'm going off on a tangent here, but I want to tell you the story. I wanted to get use out of the palettes that I was investing on, and I realized that a lot of people also want to get use out of their palettes, and maybe they needed a little bit of inspiration or an idea on how to use them. I'm editing this video now and I'm not getting to the point in what I already recorded, but what I was trying to say is that was where my 5 Looks 1 palette series came out of. I had this idea that I wanted to help people to get more use out of their palettes and that I could use every single shade in each palette and whatnot, and I started doing 5 Looks 1 palette videos. I'm going to let past me tell you the rest. The 5 Looks 1 palette video I did with this palette was not my first 5 Looks 1 palette, it was my second one, but it got a lot of views and it got me so excited. To this day, my 5 Looks 1 palette with my Born to Run palette is the most watched video on my channel. So it went a really long way and it really pushed my channel forward. It made me realize that, maybe I wasn't wrong. Maybe I could do this YouTube thing that I'm still trying to pursue to this day, right? So it just holds great memories because that video with this palette just kind of showed me that, maybe there is a little space for me in this big, very competitive YouTube world, if that makes sense, right? So that is why this Born to Run palette right here from Urban Decay is the one that holds the best memories for me. I'm so sorry for that tangent, but I had to explain. Show a palette worth the hype. The original Jaclyn Hill palette is absolutely worth the hype. I've heard that the formula is a little different, but I would say give it a try because it is a great palette with a great selection of products at a great price. I think it's worth every penny. I honestly haven't tried the new formula that the palette has, but if it's half as good as this one for that price, and I know the shades are obviously the same, I think it's totally worth it. This palette was really hyped up for a reason. It really is all that. I really, really love it. Okay, so next I'm showing you a palette not worth the hype. The first palette that came to mind for me was the Conspiracy palette from Shane Dawson and Jeffree Star, but that is not a palette that I have in my collection. I did do a video reviewing it and I did a 5 looks 1 palette with it, but that was thanks to my friend Evan. He bought the palette and he lent it to me and I was able to film those videos. I didn't purchase it myself. I wasn't really sold on it and I also was working that day, so my stars didn't align to buy that palette. And once I tried it and I did the 5 looks 1 palette for it, I know I wouldn't have reached for it ever. I feel like that's just like a random assortment of colors thrown in a palette. I really loved the series and the way they promoted it. That was kind of groundbreaking. It was amazing, but the actual product I didn't think was all that. Jeffree's formulas are great, but just kind of like that assortment of colors, I wasn't vibing with it, if that makes sense. However, like I said, I don't have that palette in my collection, so I chose a palette from my collection that I thought was a bit overhyped. And I'm really sorry about it. I just really went through all of my palettes and I couldn't think of any other one to mention to you. So this is the one I picked. Don't get mad because I do like the palette. I just, you know, I feel like it could have been better, okay? Just don't get mad. This one. So the Carly Bible and Anastasia palette. I think it is a great everyday palette, but I also think that it lacks depth. It still bothers me that Jode and OA are the same color and I never reached for this one. So that is why I think it was overhyped, because it's a collaboration with a big YouTuber and I feel like those palettes are always hyped up, right? That definitely got me to buy it and I absolutely do not regret it. I think it's a beautiful palette. It just is lacking a little bit oomph for me. Like, I don't know. I really don't know how to even explain it. I just feel like it could have had a little bit more variety maybe to it. Who am I to judge Carly Bible? She is amazing. She is a goddess. She is so fucking beautiful. I absolutely love her, but I was so excited for this palette. And then once I used it, I was struggling to come up with looks that were different enough for my 5 looks 1 palette. I felt like they all looked pretty similar. Okay, we have 2 to go. Next, I'm showing you a favorite palette from a favorite brand. I have to show you my Mothership number 5 right here. Pat McGrath is definitely grown to be one of my favorite brands. I love her foundation and concealer. I love her under eye setting powder. And I finally got myself to spend $125 on this Majestic palette right here. This is another palette that is worth the hype. This palette has the Allure Award for the best palette last year, I believe. And before I went for the palette, I watched a lot of YouTubers ranking their Pat McGrath palettes, and this one was number 1 every time. So I was like, okay, that has to be my first Pat McGrath palette, and I don't regret buying it at all. Like I said at the beginning of the video, I already bought another one just because this one was so freaking good and I love the formula and the pigment and the glitters so much that I needed to have the Mothership number 7, and that is the one that is on its way, and I just cannot wait to have it and play with it. And now she's coming up with a second edition of the Mothership number 7 and I also have to have that one. Boy, am I in trouble. Definitely expect a 5 looks 1 palette coming up with the Mothership number 7, and once the volume 2 of that one comes out, I will be doing a video reviewing it / doing a first impressions on it, and also a 5 looks 1 palette, of course. And I just cannot wait. I cannot wait. So this is a brand that I love and a palette that instantly became a favorite. Okay, and last but not least, I'm going to show you my most used palette, and I think I have to give that to this one here. This is the Desi and Katie collaboration with Those of Color. This is the Friendcation palette, and I love it. I think I can use this palette for absolutely any occasion because you can wear the most basic look with this palette, or you can create a very sultry, deep, smoky look with it. It is absolutely gorgeous. It is travel friendly. Whenever I'm leaving my house to go on a trip, whenever I have a special occasion, whenever I'm thinking of a palette that looks beautiful and glamorous, but it's easy to use and it has everything I need in it, this is the palette that I think of. So that is why I think that this is my most used palette. Again, I'm always rotating through palettes. There's really no way to tell which palette I've used the most. I've had the original Naked palette for the longest, so it would make sense that I would have used that one more. But this was, for the longest time ever, my number 1 favorite palette. So I think that this is the one that I have actually used the most. I don't think they're selling it anymore. The last time I talked about it was about a month ago, and it was still at Ulta. If I find it, I will link it, but I think it's sold out since because it was on a super discounted sale and people were grabbing it like crazy. It is such an amazing palette. If you have it, you are lucky, okay? So this is my most used palette ever. Okay, so that is it for this palette tag video. Thanks to Samantha, March, and Ali Gaines for creating this tag. You guys are brilliant, as if they're watching this, they're probably not, but that's okay. Brilliant video. I loved every question and I loved answering them, and special thanks to Morgan Turner because her video was the one that I watched. I was truly entertained with it. I really loved it, and I immediately knew that I had to film that tag for my video, so I truly hope that you guys enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to please give the video a thumbs up before you leave. Don't forget to subscribe to my channel if you're not subscribed yet. Ring the bell if you want to get notified when I upload, in case YouTube is not suggesting my videos, because a lot of you tell me that my videos don't come up on your recommended. So if you ring the bell, you'll get notified every time that I upload. As I said, I really hope that you guys enjoyed this video. I had so much fun making it. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you back in the next one. Bye!